Hey guys, what's going on? This is the conservative speaking, and I wanted to talk about Martin Luther King during the conservative's perspective of Black History Month. Isn't this amazing? Um, yeah. So Dr. Martin Luther King is a person that I really wanted to zero in on because I don't think there is a single prominent black figure that's celebrated more than Martin Luther King. I mean, the guy has his own holiday for crying out loud. Not even W.E.B. Du Bois and Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks and the rest. They weren't even able to get their own holiday. This man literally has his own holiday. All right. Usually it's on the every third week of January. But I wanted to speak on Martin Luther King because again, he is the most celebrated, prominent black figure uh, in American history, and he is the main person that they would like to speak on when it comes to Black History Month. But now, obviously, people for those of you who don't know who Martin Luther King is, Martin Luther King was a minister and and a civil rights activist. One of the most probably one of the most well known civil rights activists of our time. He was the guy that led the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, and then in '63 he delivered the "I Have a Dream" speech on in Lincoln Memorial on the Lincoln Memorial. I want to say right. Well, it was near the it was right at the Lincoln Memorial where one of the most one of the biggest statements that I was able to take out from his speech that I think a lot of people can relate to is that we should not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character, which is something that that holds that holds prevalent to this day, which is something that we that we that we live in, that does exist to this day, and it's something that unfortunately a lot of black folks do not acknowledge. And if they did, then they would truly take into consideration what Martin Luther King meant by that statement. Now, although Martin Luther King meant well, and obviously, then he was the guy that led the many marches, the Selma marches, the Montgomery, Alabama march, I believe in 1963 as well, and um, and he was the guy that again that led the march, and he was a true prominent figure in the civil rights movement from 1955 all the way up until his assassination in 1968. However, prior to his assassination, he was able to get three key pieces of legislation signed into law. He helped that movement. One of them was the Civil Rights Act in 1964, which ended all discrimination, which ended discrimination of blacks throughout the country. It effectively ended the Jim Crow laws, which allowed legal segregation. That's pretty much what the Civil Rights Act was for. It was there to end segregation throughout the country, and they were able to do that because from 1877 up until 1964, the Jim Crow laws were in effect, although they were in effect in states in the South. specific states in the South. It wasn't prevalent throughout all of America, just in specific states in the South. So when so the reason why that I really wanted to do a piece on Martin Luther King is because in the end, while Martin Luther King came in and while he was able to deliver um, these emotionally, spiritually motivated speeches, deep down, this man had um, a bad agenda. All right. While he may have spoken as if he meant well for the blacks, um, his intent his intent said otherwise. All right, because Martin Luther King wasn't the type of person to say that black people should overcome. He was the type of person to say that black folks should be dependent on the government. Think about what Martin Luther King sold to the blacks. Think about it. He was able to help get the legislation passed for the Civil Rights Act. And obviously it wasn't just him. I mean it was the NAACP as well. And W.E.B. Du Bois. They helped pass a law um, a law that effectively ended segregation throughout the country. Then he had another piece of legislation. Sorry. Then he had another piece of legislation signed, or he helped another piece of legislation get passed and signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson, and that was the Economic Opportunity Act, aka the Welfare Act. The Welfare Act, which has seen, which is the prime cause of 39% of black folks being on welfare and 77% of black babies being born out of wedlock because black women chose to marry the government instead of the father of their children. Also, keep in mind that the Voting Rights Act was also signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson, effectively ending all discrimination acts in 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 um in barring black folks to vote. So to put it quite frankly, um, black folks had the right to vote since 1870, 5 years after the Civil Rights Act, after the Civil War was over, and after the Civil War was over because they fought to abolish slavery. Okay, so black folks had the opportunity to vote. The problem is that most black folks were illiterate. They couldn't read at all. And um, when black folks wanted to vote, they had to go through a series of tests as well as paying a polling tax in order to have the opportunity to vote. So black folks felt that that was unfair, that they couldn't, that they were, that it was unfair that they couldn't read, that they didn't know the Constitution, and that they didn't have the money necessary to vote, which has me thinking how pathetic, how pitiful, how 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 I mean, how worthless can you be for you to sit up there and act and ultimately admit that the reason why you couldn't vote is because you were illiterate. You couldn't vote because you couldn't read. Well, then learn how to read. Gosh darn it! What the? I'm just thinking today because obviously black people are the most educated today, and I'm just thinking, well, if that was your reason for not wanting to vote, even though you had the opportunity to vote, then that was mainly on you. But whatever. So the Voting Rights Act effectively barred any barriers that would be used for the uh, blacks to exercise their right to vote. All right, which, as you can see, which right now is the worst thing that could have ever happened in this country, because now you just have a whole bunch of blacks, a whole bunch of ignorant blacks who are completely uneducated about politics voting. How has that helped America, and how has that helped really the integrity of the black community? When you know that more than 90% of black voters vote Democrat, even though a vast majority of them couldn't tell you one single thing that Democrat stands for, on one single policy that Democrat politician stands for that will better um, the people in America. Amazing. And then another thing that was signed into law by Lyndon B. Johnson was the Housing Act, the Equal Housing Act, which is responsible for all of the housing projects that exist in America. All right. The Housing Act is the reason why most black folks are impoverished, because they chose to live um in a housing in a building that is that is provided by the government. To put it quite frankly, black people decided to allow the government to take care of them, as opposed to them taking care of them, as opposed to allowing themselves to take care of them instead of the government. Black people have been brainwashed to believe that the government has to take care of them, as opposed to allowing themselves to be took as allowing for themselves to be taken care of. These people looked upon Martin Luther King as a god, and prior to the Civil Rights Act being signed into law, black people used to look upon God to guide them, not another human being. But the minute that they decided to look towards another human being for guidance, that was the beginning of the end of what you know as the standard for the black community, because the black community at one time held the golden standard of how to live your life in society. But once they chose to allow themselves to be led by another human being, that was the beginning of the end of that. And I want to show you something that that will pretty much drive home the point that Martin Luther King was was a wolf in sheep's clothing, a man that wound up selling snake oil and wind up being a sellout to the blacks. All right. Um, Here's a clip of uh, the message that I'm trying to bring home about Martin Luther King. All right. And after I show you this, then you'll be able to understand um, where I'm coming from and why I'm speaking about Martin Luther King the way that I am. Watch this.
Dr. King was a democratic socialist who was committed moral standpoint. And for some, that was not only radical, for some in the government, he was the most dangerous human being in the country. King.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. Martin Luther King was a traitor to the blacks. Wow. I mean, a person that is the most revered um, wind up becoming a person who literally sold out the blacks. Martin Luther King is a sellout to the black community, a sellout. But um, you can't really put all of it on Martin Luther King because, again, no one told the blacks to follow another man and to have another man guide you and lead the way. So it also falls on the people who followed him. But his ideology comes from a source of socialism. For instance, this man this man wanted to set up um, the Poor People's Party, or something like that in that context. He wanted to set up a Poor People's Party where he would bring people of all races, white, black, um, Latino, people of all races, and he wanted to set up um, he wanted to set up tents. He wanted to set up tents outside of D.C. outside of um outside of the Washington D.C. government buildings. I mean, and the poor people's party. I mean, that is equivalent to occupational Wall Street, occupation Wall Street, where you had a bunch of bums, a bunch of losers, a bunch of misguided buffoons who who were against capitalism, even though they were wearing things that were designed by capitalists, and these losers would sit out in front of these major corporation buildings, and they will literally set up a tent. They would literally set up a makeshift tent around that area, camping out there because they felt that the corporations owe them money. They because they felt entitled to something that they sure as heck didn't earn. That's what Martin Luther King wanted for these people. He wanted to set up a poor people's party. Poor people's party where you had a bunch of losers, where you had a bunch of impoverished people, all right? Vast majority of them through their own choice, a vast majority of poor people to set up encampments outside Washington, D.C. Amazing. That's the type of movement that Martin Luther King was aiming for. This man was a radical. This is the reason why the FBI had to track his every move. This man was dangerous. The type of ideology that Martin Luther King was expressing is that of communism, and that doesn't work in America. If Martin Luther King loved communism so much, then he should have lived in China or North Korea or Cuba or 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 Iran. Go live over there. Don't bring that communist ideology to America. That doesn't work. That will bankrupt the country. And not to mention, it will cause the type of radicalism and domestic terrorism that we are seeing today. Is it fair to say now that Martin Luther King was responsible for all of the of the radical domestic terrorism that we're seeing now through the hands of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, a bunch of entitled Marxist losers who who are um, who are causing chaos and agitation all throughout the country, all because all because they feel entitled to the type of radicalism that they want to propose. All based because they want things that they want, not necessarily because they're willing to earn things through the laws of the land. They want things based on their own rules. They want to make up their own rules. They want to rewrite the Constitution. These people want a new world order, and that's the type of ideology that Martin Luther King started with these blacks. Martin Luther King was a snake in the grass. He was a traitor. He was a wicked man, and the fact that he was able to convince the blacks to buy into this because he was able to preach to the people, because he was able to try to um, blend socialism with Christianity, and the fact that the blacks were able to buy it hook, sink, and line, even though the blacks who have been following God for so long knew better. They knew that the things that Martin Luther King was trying to bring was not even biblical like. All right? The blacks knew, hey, those that do not eat will starve. Those that do not work do not eat. Martin Luther King wanted the blacks to be dependent on the government, the very government that has kept them oppressed and has kept them feeling like victims and has kept them feeling that they cannot advance, even though the blacks have very has had as many opportunities to advance as much as they wanted to. Martin Luther King did not promote independence, but dependence, and he wanted black people to follow suit, and they did. When he made things such as saying, "I don't know if I'm going to get there, but I promise you, you will get to the promised land." When black people already experienced the promised land when slavery was officially abolished in 1865, which made black people official citizens of this country, is the simple proof that black people can no longer think for themselves. Black people have been brainwashed so much that they have no common sense. They couldn't even think, well, wait a minute. We were already free. We were free when we were free when they officially abolished slavery. After the Civil War was fought, a bloody civil war, a civil war that's seen thousands of people killed because they fought for the right for the blacks to be free. The fight started then, and then it ended in 1865, and it ultimately gave black people the right to becoming U.S. citizens and the right to vote. All right. That's what the 13th Amendment was for. The 13th The 13th Amendment effectively abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment made blacks natural citizens of the United States of America, and the 15th Amendment gave blacks the right to vote. So, how Martin Luther King can come in and say, well, we're trying to I'll take you to the promised land. But the blacks are already in the promised land. But it's but being influenced by someone who is very articulate, a person who is a preacher and has the gift of gab and can know and can speak to the people and string at their emotions was really um, the undoing of black folks, because black people can no longer think for themselves. They allow other people who are influencers to influence their thought. But let me know what you guys think about Martin Luther King. Leave a comment in the comment section after you subscribe to my channel. Click the like button. Uh, Smash that like. Matter of fact, don't click the like button. Smash the like button. Share the video if you like the video, and subscribe to my channel, as I'll be able to provide you more content on the double. And after you subscribe to my channel, uh, click on the notification button so you'll be notified when my channel is dropping new content for your eyes to feast on. And with that being said, this is The Conservative signing out. Perspective, happy conservative perspective Black History Month, and I'll see you around.